Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm the host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite hobbies, sleep. And the importance of sleep. So we're going to talk about ways to build healthy sleep habits from birth. And my guest is Sarah Skiles. She is a certified pediatric sleep consultant, certified doula, advanced newborn care specialist, and mom of two amazing boys. And Sarah's personal experience with spiraling health and postpartum mood disorders due to sleep deprivation is her driving force behind the passionate way she serves, supports, and guides new parents. And this is really a hot topic, the whole idea of sleep. It was actually something that was talked about just yesterday in our postnatal yoga class, when one of the moms was talking about how incredibly exhausted and burnt out she is by helping her 4-month-old sleep, and that the baby would wake up and she was the only one that was able to help that baby fall asleep. And that led to a whole conversation in the class that we had to eventually rein in to actually do some yoga. But it is such an important topic for so many new parents. So when Sarah reached out to be on Yoga Birth Babies, I immediately jumped at the idea of bringing a sleep specialist on. So I think if you are preparing for a newborn, or you have a child with sleep issues, or you just want to set really healthy sleep habits from the beginning, I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. Now, before we get to my conversation with Sarah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being part of our community and listening. And for those that have left a rating and review, thank you, because it helps people find their way to the podcast and to our classes. And then just an update for what's happening at the studio. So we have maintained, and I'm so proud of this, online classes 7 days a week and live in-studio classes 6 days a week. So we've got morning and evening live prenatal classes. You can come in studio. We've got hybrid classes. We have re-release classes. We have so many opportunities for us to all practice together, prenatal, postnatal. And of course, we got of our online workshops and our in-studio workshops. So much to support you on this path into and through pregnancy and parenthood. Now, I also know we have some listeners that are yoga teachers, and you're interested in deepening your knowledge of how to support the perinatal community. Well, I've got you covered, because we've got 4 times a year, we have our 85-hour, I'll be honest, more than 85-hour prenatal yoga teacher training. We do it twice a year online and twice a year in studio in New York City. And then coming up in May, we have our online postnatal teacher training. We only do that once a year, because after 5 trainings, I am burnt out. But it's something I'm so passionate about, and I get so excited to help people bring this work to their community. So if that interests you, you can check everything out on our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. And of course, we've got free downloadables. I'm continuing to add to our free online yoga classes. So check all that out while you're there. And as I always mention, or I'm not sure if I've mentioned it enough, but I'm going to mention it again. If there is a topic that I haven't covered recently that you want me to talk about, let me know. You can always reach me at deb@prenatalyogacenter.com and let me know what I should speak about, and I will find an expert to come on and talk about that topic. Or if you are someone that wants to be on the podcast, you can always fill out an application on our website, and we'll see if we're a good match. I love doing these conversations, so it's really a joy for me as well. So I think that's it. So let's take a super quick break, and when we come back, let's talk healthy sleep habits.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm doing great. And I am so excited to talk about sleep habits for babies because yesterday in postnatal class, that was something that came up. One of the students, her baby is 4 months old, and she was saying that all she does, she's the only one that her baby will let her hold him, and she's up all night and her body is a mess and her mind is a wreck. And I said, I'm doing a podcast about sleep habits. So I'm so excited. So I'll tell her, I'll give her a little heads up about what we talk about, but this is such an important conversation. So thank you for bringing your knowledge to the podcast today.
Absolutely. I am super excited to give lots of education and lots of tips today.
So let's start with, I'd love to learn a little bit about you and what led you down the path as a sleep consultant and a newborn care specialist.
So I actually started as a labor doula over 10 years ago. I got started with that after my oldest son was born, and he's 11 now. And I had this great experience with giving birth and pregnancy and having so much support during those two things. And then postpartum was not so much. The level of support kind of drops off after that, where you give birth and it's like, here's your child, best of luck to you. And sleep was definitely not something that was happening in our house. So it took me about 14 months with my second to actually go through the sleep training process. And once we did, he slept through the night on night 2. And ever since then, he's been a great sleeper. He's 8 years old now. But I always knew from the beginning that the birth was just a drop in the bucket when it comes to the level of support that new parents need. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't too long before I began to undergo trainings and certifications for postpartum care. I'm an advanced newborn care specialist and now a certified pediatric sleep consultant. So really anything from the pregnancy through the delivery, through postpartum and taking care of the baby while healing from giving birth, and then even children all the way up to age 7 now. I can help with sleeping challenges from nap strikes to frequent night wakings, night terrors, toddlers, making middle of the night visits to the master bedroom 200 times a night, and everything in between.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends that say their kids, even at my kids are on the same age as your kids. So kind of that generation, like my kids are still coming into the bed. So I think what you offer is so, so important. So let's start with setting expectations of what sleep looks like for a newborn. Because I remember when I had my son, who's also 11, and my friends would be like, he slept through the night. I'm like, really? What does that mean? Because mine did not. So how long should parents expect an average newborn to actually sleep at night?
Yes. So we all have that one friend who's like, my baby slept through the night ever since birth. And we're just like, oh, because the reality is for most of us, that's not going to happen. So it's more about setting positive and realistic expectations of what is the baby capable of, and then how can we make sure that our needs are getting met as well. Mm-hmm. So in the newborn stage, the actual definition of sleeping through the night is only 5 hours. So even, when we consider sleeping through the night, we might think of 10 to 12 hours, and that might be realistic for an older child, but it's not realistic for a brand new baby. So even with that 5 hours, we don't even look for that until we have the pediatrician's approval and the baby is surpassing their birth weight. Because other than that, we would even have to wake them up, every few hours at night to make sure that they're their little tiny itty bitty tummies are getting filled on a regular basis so that they can gain weight and be healthy and all of those things. So what we're looking for when it comes to newborn sleep, and when I say newborn, I generally am talking about up to about 8 weeks old. We're looking for more of a routine than a schedule, because while an older baby and a toddler would really thrive on a schedule, you can tell your newborn it's 11 p.m. and they're going to be like, I don't care. What's 11 p.m.? Yeah. So what we're really looking for in that newborn stage is to just kind of start setting up some repetition and some habits. So, we eat, we get that little tiny tummy nice and full. Then we burp, then we change diaper, and then we lovingly stare into each other's eyes for a few minutes, and then swaddle up, and then nap. And then once we get to about that 2-hour mark, we repeat that all over again. So it's really more about setting up some repetition for the baby where they start to realize the patterns in their days. Like, oh, first we do this, and first we do this, and then business happens. So it's really about setting up these routines rather than saying, okay, at 9 p.m. you do this, because we all know that cluster feeding is a thing and the witching hour is a thing. And we need to kind of get the whole family's needs met and not try to, put a newborn into something that they're not developmentally ready for yet.
So I'm going a little off topic because you just kind of made me think of this, and you are a newborn specialist. So I'm going to dip into that pocket of your knowledge for a moment. So if we're saying like the first 8-ish weeks, it's about setting up routine. How do you suggest that the person actually doing the feeding, especially if they're exclusively breastfeeding, gets support? Because if they're up every 2 to 3 hours, I remember this, and it's been years, it was exhausting doing exactly what you said. Like, I would go to bed and I would have the diaper in the other room all ready and do exactly what you said: feed, change, burp, change, swaddle, bounce on the ball to try to get the baby to sleep, and then do it again a little bit later. So, and it's exhausting. So if that is the routine for the first 8 weeks, how does one survive that?
That's a great question. So making sure that the parents' needs get met, I mean, that's a non-negotiable. So you're right. It's like, how do we do that when the baby does need attention, every couple hours, almost constantly during the day, and then, at least every couple hours during the night. So obviously the gold standard of parent care would be to have, overnight help. But for many families, that's not a viable solution, whether it's financially or for some other reason, it's not a viable solution. And not everybody has family in town that are able to come in and help. So, they say things like sleep when the baby sleeps, but then they're like, well, are you also going to do laundry when the baby does laundry? So that's not always the most helpful advice either. So, especially in partnered households, the most realistic thing is to make sure that the adults are taking 4-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. So a lot of parents, especially when it comes to breastfeeding mothers, they tend to take on the bulk of that responsibility of feeding and think, well, nobody else can do this. I'm the only person who can assume this responsibility of feeding. And there are different options. Somebody can bring baby to nurse. Pumping a bottle could be an option. But allowing another caregiver to be able to assume that responsibility. So a 4-hour shift, those can be traded off. In a partnered household, it's like, okay, one of you is probably a morning person and one of you is probably a night owl. Figure out which one of you are, and that's the shift that you're going to take, so the other person can have a protected 4-hour stretch of sleep per 24 hours. As a doula, newborn care specialist, that is one of the most important pieces of advice that I give, is to protect that 4-hour stretch each day, no matter what time of day that happens, because otherwise your mental health is going to go down the drain.
Yeah, that is such great advice. So the first 8 weeks, it's setting up routine. So when might we expect a baby to start to get little bits of longer chunks, possibly up to that 5 hours?
It definitely depends on the baby of how well they're eating, what their weight gain is like. Babies who have issues such as torticollis, tongue ties, lip ties, things like that, they do tend to have a little bit more trouble when it comes to sleeping and sleeping longer stretches at night. So it does depend on the baby. A baby with no issues of any kind like that, that's gaining weight really well, taking really good full feedings at the breast or really good feedings at the bottle, typically by 6 to 8 weeks, we can see that they are trending more toward these 4 to 6 hour stretches at night when positive sleep habits are being formed. With babies that do struggle a little bit more with feeding and intake and things like that, it can be in the 3 to 4 month age range before they start doing stretches of 4 to 6 hours per night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to start talking about sleep training because this came up yesterday when I was talking in postnatal class, and it became such a conversation that, and I know it's controversial because I think some people think it's just like shut the door and peace out. Like, good luck, baby. Mm-hmm. The way that I was fortunate to work with somebody that was really systematic about it. She talked about listen for the quality of the cry. And if it's what she called a red alert cry, you go in and go from less to more. And if it's like a yellow alert cry, then you wait for like 30 seconds to a minute and build up. And I think the most my son ever really cried without us attending was maybe a minute to 2. And one of the women in class, like, I really thought it was you just let them cry. So can you talk a little bit about what sleep training is and maybe do a little myth busting as you're explaining it?
Yes, absolutely. This is such a great topic because it's something that I come up against all the time. You know, I say, oh, I'm a sleep consultant. I help babies get more sleep. And the first thing that they say is, oh, I could never let my baby cry it out. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to. Obviously, if somebody wanted to just put the baby in the crib and say, good luck, see you in the morning, they could do that without, hiring a sleep consultant to help guide them through this process. So kind of like you said with the person that you worked with, kind of coming up with a more individual plan for that baby, where it's like, we're going to physically and emotionally support the baby through this process. At no time are we ever leaving a baby alone to cry for hours or forcing them to go without a meal or anything like that. I've worked with plenty of babies where it's like they physically or medically need to have a certain number of feedings in the middle of the night. So that baby's going to get woken up and they're going to have that feed, and then they're going to go back to sleep until it's time for the next feed. Mm-hmm. So sleep training is simply teaching the baby the skill of being able to fall asleep without having to be put to sleep or have the caregiver make them to go to sleep. That's really all it is. There are many, many different ways to go about that. And there are many more respectful and positive and supportive ways to do that than just putting the baby in the crib and shutting the door. So there's kind of a scale of parental involvement. So I like to get a feel for what the family feels comfortable and confident with. Like maybe we give the baby a few minutes to try to settle down. And then if not, we can go in there and, physically and emotionally support them through the process. Or maybe if it's a 4-year-old who's having bad dreams, maybe we're actually sitting in the room with them, helping to build their confidence and building their skills. But it's very individual to the child, and it's very respectful, takes it into account their whole lives, their feeding, their routines, their habits, their personality, what's going to work for them. So it's very individual.
When do you recommend, if someone is considering sleep training, at what age do you think that might want to start?
There's really no too late as far as sleep training, and there's not necessarily a too early either. I mean, we're not trying to get a baby to unnaturally go through the night when they're in that newborn stage, like we mentioned, but we can definitely do things like introducing swaddles and white noise and routines and habits and things like that. But I would say the most common age that I work with families would be the 6-month age range, because they realize at this point, like, oh, they're not a newborn anymore, and they haven't grown out of this. Mm-hmm. Again, at the 9-month age range, like, oh, well, they still haven't grown out of it. And then, on into the 2, 3, 4 year age range. So there's never too early to begin introducing healthy sleep habits, and it's never too late to actually come up with a sleep training method.
So what about when I've heard people say like, oh, we have that 4-month regression? What is that typically about?
Yeah, so sleep regressions are really more of a developmental leap. So you may have heard of things like the Wonder Weeks, where it talks about their leaps in development, and they're basically going through a growth spurt. So what happens at that 4-month age range is that they're kind of making this shift, this transition from being in that like cuddly, lumpy little newborn in a swaddle into an active, alert baby who's rolling over, looking around, taking in the whole world. They don't want to miss anything. And so when they go through that growth spurt, they're going to be up and down a little bit more. They're going to be less receptive to just wrapping them up and laying them down in the crib, and they sleep for hours. That's usually the time when they stop taking those 2-hour long naps and they start taking 20 to 30-minute long naps. And the parents are saying, hey, we're taking a step backwards here. So that's why you hear it referred to as a regression, but really it's just a leap in development. It's just a growth spurt. And when the baby has good sleep habits and knows how to independently fall asleep, those growth spurts typically are just a little blip on the radar.
And that's when they might be starting to bust out of their swaddle a little more?
Yes, definitely. So the baby needs to be able to roll over, and then swaddling is considered to no longer be safe.
Yeah, I remember swaddling. My husband's like, can we use duct tape? I'm like, no, we cannot. Because my son always would get like the little burrito, and then boop, an arm comes out, and then boop, the other arm comes out. And then soon thereafter, and soon thereafter he figured out how to roll over. I'm like, well, those days are gone. So
yeah.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, what are some ways to start to build healthy sleep habits? All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey there. Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Okay, so we understand, the realistic expectation of sleep, and, a 6-week-old is probably not getting those 5-hour stretches, and understand a little bit about sleep regression. And it's just really milestones and developmental things that we're looking for. So what are some ways to build healthy sleep habits?
So depending on the age, I really like to introduce a developmentally appropriate schedule. So for example, for a 6 or 7-month-old, we might be looking at transitioning into a 2-nap schedule. That's the most easy one, where it's basically wake at 7, nap at 9, nap at 2, begin your bedtime routine at 6:30, and have them asleep in the crib at 7. So schedules are made based off of the age of the baby in relation to how many hours of sleep are needed per 24 hours. So a brand new little tiny baby is going to need, 18 hours out of every 24 hours. A 6-month-old is going to need more like 14 hours out of every 24 hours. And then once they're 2 years old, that's only going to be 12 hours. So that's how we build the schedule and the number of naps. But the main thing is helping the baby to be comfortable being laid down in their bassinet or their crib, to where you can swaddle them if it's age appropriate. If not, I recommend sleep sacks. You do their little routine. So it's the same thing every single time. The auditory cue, that could be a special song, a little lullaby, or a phrase like, it's night time, I love you so much. And then they go down into the crib. So they're building that repetition where every single day it's never a surprise that what comes next is they go down into the crib and they go to sleep. So it's about schedules, routines, and habits.
You are totally speaking my language. I love schedules. I love routines. I love habits. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is we did this with my kids since they were little, and it's definitely changed, but we still have a nighttime routine that screens go off because, my daughter just turned 9. So 9 and 11, screens go off at 7:30. They shower, they read, we kiss them goodnight. Like it's kind of the same since they were little. And on certain nights, like if we're
on that.
and if it is certain nights, like maybe we're out really late, or like I remember sometimes we'd fly home from vacation. My daughter's like, so it's like midnight. She's like, am I still taking a shower? I'm like, no, you're going to bed. But it's like they relate bedtime to taking a shower or sometimes a bath and putting their jams on and reading, or sometimes we'll play a game of cards and going to bed. So it's interesting that has stuck, and that's what they find comforting.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They find so much security in that knowing that you're going to help them hold that boundary. There's so much security and confidence in that for a child, even at a young age.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little fluidity, like how much. So again, being a little type A, my first child had a very routine, I can say maybe a little rigid nap schedule that we knew what time he would go down. And it used to drive my mom crazy when she would visit. She's like, can't we just skip it? I'm like, no, we cannot. So we had a pretty rigid nap schedule. But then when baby 2 came along, her schedule couldn't be as rigid because my older one had things he had to do, like get picked up from preschool or something. So talk about how much fluidity do you recommend in a baby's schedule, and can naps vary, or should they be kept as regular as possible? And I guess a third question is, where can naps take place? Because I was always told the crib is best, but sometimes I used to have to just wear my daughter and have her nap on me.
Right. Okay. I'll talk about the schedule first. Don't let me forget about that question.
Okay.
I love the question though, because I really feel for people who need their day to be scheduled, and then having a baby kind of, upends that a little bit. And I feel for people who, kind of want to rebel against the schedule a little bit. I have ADHD. A schedule to me is something that's more of a guideline. So my recommendation is always for the morning wake up time and the first nap of the day to be fixed. Those need to occur at the same time. So even if your kid is sleeping a little late and it's kind of a pain for you to get up because you think, I can get so much done. I can drink my cup of coffee. You got to get them up at the same time every single day, and then lay them down for the morning nap at the same time, because that actually kind of trains the body to release the hormones, like sleep hormones and alertness hormones, at the same time each day. So you have less fussing and fighting at nap time, because they have FOMO. They don't want to lay down, but they're going to get drowsy at the same time. After that, if you have a doctor's appointment or something, or you go over to a relative's house, the rest of your day and then subsequently the night are not going to be thrown off as much if you can keep those first 2 morning things really consistent.
That makes sense. Okay. So then let's go to the question of, where do the naps have to take place? Should they, maybe I shouldn't put the should, is it okay, or is it recommended they have naps in the same place? Or what are your thoughts about stroller naps or baby wearing naps?
Yeah, so this is, again, something that kind of depends on the child. So some kids come out of the womb with that kind of type A personality where they're like, I like it to be like this. This is the only way that I want it, and I'm going to cry if it's not like that. So, and some kids are more go with the flow. We can definitely encourage a go with the flow child. And from birth, I love to have a newborn doing a whole mix of things. I would love for them to take maybe their morning nap independently in the bassinet, and then maybe they have their mid-morning nap in the stroller on a walk, and then maybe they have their next nap in the bassinet again, and then maybe the evening nap is, cuddled up on their parent's chest. When they get a little bit older, say the 4 to 6 month age range, that's when we would want to have a little more consistency with where they're sleeping. But if they have a solid routine in place, you can do the routine anywhere. It can be if you're traveling, if you're at grandma's, you can sing them the same lullaby, dress them in the same sleep sack, turn on the same sound machine, give them the same binky, and they'll be fine.
All right. So I'm going again a little off the cuff. So one of my students, who's also one of my friends, this was maybe 6-7 years ago, she got something, and I'm sure listeners know this, the snoo. And her son was sleeping very well. But then when she was traveling, her mom, I think, bought one. I don't think they were renting them back then. Bought one for her house when she traveled down south to see her. And she was stressed out. She's like, he only knows how to sleep in that. What are your thoughts? Are we training babies to then, if they use a device or something like that, that they're then not going to have the ability to sleep without that device?
The snoo is kind of a controversial thing for that.
Oh, did I open a can of worms? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I think it's fine. As a newborn care specialist in the past, sometimes I've thought, oh, that's replacing me. That's replacing my job. But also we have to consider the parents' mental health and being able to get a little bit more of a stretch of sleep. And if the snoo does accomplish that and everybody is sleeping better because of that, I honestly don't have a problem with that. And I have had many clients come to me, when baby gets 4 months old or so, they're outgrowing the snoo and they're like, uh-oh, no, we got to put them in their own crib now and they don't have that motion. What are we going to do? Well, I can tell you, I have never had even the slightest problem teaching a baby to transition into the crib, and with very few tears to boot.
Oh, that's good.
So I think if parents want to use that for those first couple months when it's like survival mode, and then kind of, do some sleep training when it comes time to go to the crib, I just don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's something that each family needs to evaluate if it's what they want to do, and then just make that choice on their own.
Yeah, I'm with you. If we can protect the sleep of the parent, I am all for that. Totally makes sense.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the older child. So how would you organize a sleep routine differently for an older child if they've never had consistent sleep before?
Well, it's really never too late to introduce those habits, to introduce that consistency and say, okay, a little 8-month-old, I know you've been doing your own thing up until now, but now we're going to ask you to sleep in the crib, and we're going to ask you to take, a morning nap and an afternoon nap. Usually they do pretty well. They're very adaptable at that age. I've worked with families where they had a 3 or 4-year-old that had slept in their bed their whole life. And then we were able to very quickly and easily, no fuss, teach them the confidence and the skills to be able to be in their own bed. So really it's just about kind of coming up with what method you're going to use for the child, coming up with the age appropriate routine and schedule, and then just supporting the child as they transition through that. So it's not as scary or as big of a deal as some people may think.
So I'm curious, do you have any specific tips for that 3 or 4-year-old? Because it's different than a baby where they're in a crib. A 3 or 4-year-old can just scoot out of their bed and end up back in the parents' bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's actually an age that I tend to specialize in, because once they're that age, it's like the parent has now tried everything under the sun and they realize that it's not getting any better and they might need some extra help. So a lot of times playing around with the bedtime is a big deal. Are they getting too much sleep during the day? We look at scheduling and things like that, but ultimately it tends to come down to behavior and what's being allowed. So I really like to take an approach where we have a family meeting, and, this child that's 3 or 4 is old enough to understand, what the parents are talking about and saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. And if you get out of the bed, this is how we're going to handle it. And then you have to follow through with that every single time. The child is going to get bored eventually, but here's the thing. You're going to get bored first. So you have to outlast the child in your boredom until they see that, oh, my parents are not just going to back down and let me come and jump on their bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so it's just that consistency and upholding those boundaries and saying, hey, tonight you need to stay in your own bed. If you need to go to the potty, you can call for me and I will come to your room. I will help you, but you need to stay in the bed. If you get out of the bed, I am going to come and walk you back to the bed and put you back in the bed. Now, you might have to do that 100 times, but the child is going to get bored of getting that exact same response every single time. And after a few nights, you're going to stop having all of those 1 a.m. visits.
I will say that sounds so hard for the parent. I feel for the parent that just wants to sleep and they're constantly walking their child back. Oh, all right. So what about the situation where this has happened to one of my friends? She says that she will tuck her daughter in, get in bed with her around 7, fall asleep herself, wake up around 8:30 or 9 after a nap, and then she has a hard time falling asleep. So should parents not try to cuddle with their child as they're falling asleep?
I think the cuddling should take place during the bedtime routine. So anything like nursing, bottle feeding, rocking, cuddling, all of that can be incorporated into the bedtime routine, and extra time can be allowed in that bedtime routine. But once the child goes down in the bed at the appointed
Once the light
time,
is off?
Yes. Once the sound machine is on and the light is off, that's it. That's the time. I think the parent can temporarily stay in the room or sit in the chair and things like that. But I really like an approach. I use this a lot with that age where every night you sit further away and then it kind of gradually gets the child used to being on their own a little bit more. So they feel confident with the parent being there in the room, but you're gradually getting a little bit further away until eventually you can be out of the room. And then they realize that they have the confidence that they don't need the parent to be right there in order to fall asleep. And then it's just, that's a really, really great strategy to get those no fuss bedtimes when it comes to toddlers and older kids.
Yeah. My friend actually has an older child. I think she's 6, but I can just imagine. I'm like, because by the end of the day, if I lay down with my daughter, who's now 9, for her to fall asleep, I would 100% fall asleep. In fact, what's been happening is now I'm kind of not conked out, but I like to get in bed and read around 8:30. And there's been times where my son is still up and I'm like, you come kiss me goodnight. Like, I'm not going into your room. If you want to say goodnight, you stroll in here because I'm not getting back out of bed. So we've reversed just a little.
Tuck me in.
Exactly. Is there anything else that I haven't asked that is so super important I feel like you've given so much information, but is there anything I didn't ask that is important for setting up and building those healthy sleep habits?
There was one other thing I think I wanted to mention on the older children.
Sure.
Was a lot of times they talk about fears and anxieties, and a lot of time that ends up being a stalling tactic to bring the parents back into the room because they have learned that if they express that the parents are going to come running. So they will keep stringing that out. And parents, they tend to, they absolutely want to do the right thing here. They want to support the child, but they unwittingly prolong this issue by saying things like, I'm gonna spray the room with monster spray to keep the monsters away. Or, I'm gonna talk to the monsters and tell them to leave you alone. And those things are basically agreeing with the child that monsters exist. And it's going to start perpetuating those fears for real. So my advice in these situations is always to remain totally calm and in control and show your child that you are in control of the situation. Simply reiterating that, monsters do not exist. You are safe. I am your parent. I am here to keep you safe. I'm not going to allow anything bad to happen to you. You're safe in the room. See you in the morning.
That is great. I hadn't heard of the monster spray, but that is really great. Like I like what you're saying. Don't play into, I've got the monster spray. I really like that.
Right.
My kids would be, we haven't had this for a while, but they used to be like, I'm thirsty or I'm hungry. I'm like, oh my God, you need to go to bed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I will say, I used to stall when I remember having babysitters, and I remember being like, I have to tuck my bed in a certain way. I was the worst. It was awful. So yeah. I feel for those. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new or expectant parents? We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So what would you like to leave us with?
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
So at the end of the day, I just feel like you can read all the books and print out all the schedules and things like that. And that's fine, but the child is an individual person. I mean, I have all my charts, when I'm working with a client, but ultimately the kid's not a robot, and I might have to try new and different things to find out what works for that specific child. It's almost like sleep coaching is more of an art than a science. So there's really a certain level of experimentation involved. I post on my social media like, oh, this new client, sleeping through the night on night 1. And that's exciting, but that's not realistic for all of the children. So if you are in that stage right now where you're trying to figure out what's going to help your child sleep, really give each thing a solid try for about a week, not just trying something for one day and saying, oh, that didn't work, because it's that consistency, like we talked about, the consistency, the security, the boundaries that the children thrive off of. And sometimes it truly does just take some repetition and discipline on the part of the parent or the caregiver to start seeing that progress when it comes to sleep, and really overall the children's behavior and things like that.
Oh, that is great advice. And I just want to, again, listeners, but it is an art, not a science, because I think sometimes people can get a book or a system or a downloadable and be like, this is the schedule, and then get discouraged if it doesn't work. And each child has their own personality of how they have to sleep. And so I guess, following the child, which we do on so many other things, follow the child. Yes. So, but with consistency at the same time. I really appreciate what you said about that. Where can people find your work?
So my website is www.thebabyisasleep.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at thebabyisasleep.
Perfect. So we'll make sure that is in our show notes. This has been so fun. I personally think sleep is one of my favorite habits and one of my favorite, it is one of my favorite pastimes. If I could take a nap, I always do. So I hold sleep in such high regards. So thank you for sharing about that, because I think when we're well rested, we are of better mind and just kinder to each other. So this has been so important. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.